I can still feel the cold. 80 years later, and my hands shake when the temperature drops below freezing. December 1944, Belgium, the Ardennes Forest. And I had 30 seconds to decide which of my men would live and which would be left behind. My name is James Mueller. I was 24 years old, a sergeant in the United States Army, a farm boy from Iowa who'd never been more than 50 miles from home before they shipped me to Europe. They gave me 12 men and told me to keep them alive. I failed one of them. His name was Henry Schmidt, 23 years old. And every night for the past 80 years, before I close my eyes, I whisper his name like a prayer I don't deserve to say. This is the story of the choice I made, the impossible decision that saved 11 lives and cost me my soul. But to understand that choice, you need to understand who I was before the war, who we all were, because war doesn't just change you, it reveals who you really are when everything you believe is tested. And sometimes what it reveals is something you can never accept. Let me take you back to where it all began. South Boston, Iowa. Population 312. A farming community where everyone knew everyone. Where church on Sunday was mandatory, and hard work was the only religion that really mattered. I grew up on a corn farm, 200 acres that my grandfather had bought in 1897. My father worked that land every day of his life, and I was supposed to do the same. Wake up before dawn, feed the animals, check the fields, plant in spring, harvest in fall. The same rhythm, the same routine, year after year after year. It was a simple life, a good life, the kind of life where you knew exactly what your future would look like because it looked like your father's life and his father's before him. No surprises, no uncertainty, just the land and the work and the seasons turning. Then Pearl Harbor happened, December 7th, 1941. I was 19 years old, sitting at our kitchen table listening to the radio when the announcement came through. Japanese bombers had attacked Hawaii, sunk our battleships. Thousands of Americans were gone. And just like that, everything changed. President Roosevelt's voice came through that radio speaker, declaring war, calling on every American to do their duty. My father looked at me across that table, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. Not for himself, for me. He knew what was coming. Knew that boys my age would be called up. Knew that farming wasn't going to keep me home much longer. You don't have to go right away, he said quietly. Farming is essential work. They'll defer you. You can stay, help with the harvest. He was right. I could have stayed. Could have worked the farm. Done my part that way. Stayed safe while other men went to fight. But I didn't want to stay safe. I wanted to prove something. Prove I was more than just a farm boy who'd never been anywhere. Prove I could lead men. Prove I mattered beyond 300 acres of Iowa corn. I enlisted 3 weeks later, January 1942. Walked into the recruitment office in Des Moines and signed my name on the dotted line. The recruiter was an old Army sergeant, looked at me with eyes that had seen things I couldn't imagine. "Why do you want to join, son?" he asked. "It's my duty," I said. "America needs men. I want to serve. That was all true, but there was another reason I didn't say out loud. I wanted to be somebody. Wanted to be more than James Mueller, farmer's son from nowhere, Iowa. Wanted to matter. The sergeant nodded slowly, like he'd heard that answer 1,000 times before. The Army will give you plenty of chances to prove yourself, he said. Just make sure you're ready for what that means. I thought I understood. I didn't understand anything. Basic training started in February, Camp Dodge, Iowa. 12 weeks of hell. They broke us down and built us back up. Taught us how to shoot, how to march, how to follow orders, how to be soldiers instead of civilians. I was good at it, better than I expected. I could shoot straight, could run for miles, could do 100 push-ups without stopping. The physical part came easy. It was the other part that was harder. The part where they taught us that following orders mattered more than thinking, that the unit mattered more than the individual, that sometimes good men had to do terrible things because that's what war required. I absorbed all of it, believed all of it, wanted to be the best soldier they'd ever seen. And somewhere along the way, they noticed, pulled me aside after 8 weeks, said I had leadership potential, asked if I'd be interested in NCO training, non-commissioned officer, learning to lead men instead of just following orders. I said yes immediately. This was exactly what I'd wanted. Proof that I was more than just a farm boy. Proof that I could lead, be somebody who mattered. They made me a sergeant in November 1942, 20 years old and suddenly responsible for 12 men. They assigned me to the 99th Infantry Division, the Checkerboard Division. Fresh unit, green troops. Most of us had never seen combat. We trained together for almost a year, learning tactics, learning each other, becoming a unit instead of just 12 individuals wearing the same uniform. Those men became my world, my responsibility, my brothers. Tommy Bianchi, 19 years old, from Brooklyn, Italian kid with a smile that could light up a room, always talking about the restaurant he was gonna open after the war, his mother's recipes, how he'd make the best pasta in New York. Dave Henderson, 26, my corporal, married with 2 kids back in Ohio, used to be a mechanic, could fix anything. Steady, reliable, the kind of man you wanted beside you when things went bad. Bobby O'Connor, 21, red-headed Irish kid from Boston. Never stopped joking, never stopped laughing. Even in the worst moments, Bobby could find something funny. That humor kept us sane sometimes. Gene Kowalski, 22, Polish kid from Chicago. Barely spoke, but when he did, people listened. Strong as an ox, could carry a full pack and a wounded man without breaking a sweat. Billy Foster, 18, from 3 farms over from mine back in Iowa. We'd known each other since we were kids, played together, went to the same school, enlisted together. He was like a little brother to me. And Henry Schmidt, 23 years old, German ancestry, just like me. His grandparents had immigrated from Bavaria in the 1880s, settled in Pennsylvania, worked in the steel mills. Henry was different from the rest of us. Quieter, more thoughtful, always reading, philosophy, literature, trying to understand the world, trying to make sense of what we were about to do. "Why do you read that stuff?" Tommy asked him once. "We're going to fight, not think." Henry smiled. "If we don't think about why we're fighting, then we're no different than the enemy. We have to believe this means something, that we're fighting for something worth dying for." I understood what he meant. War had to mean something, Had to be more than just following orders and ending lives. Otherwise, what were we? Just monsters in different uniforms. These were my men, my responsibility, and I promised myself I'd bring them all home, every single one of them. We shipped out to Europe in August 1943. Landed in England first. More training, more waiting. Then to France after D-Day, July 1944. The invasion had already happened. The beaches were secured, but the fighting wasn't over, not even close. We moved through France, then Belgium. Small engagements, patrols, learning what combat really meant. I lost my first man in September. Private First Class David Martinez. Sniper got him. One shot. Gone before he hit the ground. 20 years old, from Texas. Wanted to be a teacher after the war. I wrote the letter to his parents. Told them he died bravely, that he didn't suffer, that he was a hero. All of it was true, but it didn't make it easier. Didn't make the weight lighter. Because I was responsible for him. I was his sergeant, his leader, and I'd failed to keep him alive. That's when I learned the first lesson of command. You can do everything right and still lose men. Because war doesn't care about your plans, doesn't care about your promises. War takes what it wants, and all you can do is try to minimize the cost. We got a replacement, Private Andy Peters, 21, from Minnesota. Quiet kid. Took a while to fit in, but eventually he became part of the unit, part of the family. By December, we'd been in combat for 5 months. We'd seen things, done things, lost pieces of ourselves that we'd never get back. But we were still together. Still a unit, still brothers. And I still believed I could keep them all alive, still believed that leadership meant never leaving anyone behind, still believed that if I was smart enough, strong enough, good enough, I could save them all. I was wrong, and I was about to learn exactly how wrong in the worst possible way. December 1944. We were pulled back from the front lines for what they called rest and recuperation, sent to a supposedly quiet sector in Belgium, the Ardennes Forest. High Command said the Germans were finished in this area, that the front was stable, that we could relax, get some hot food, sleep in actual beds instead of foxholes, maybe even get some mail from home. It sounded too good to be true. It was too good to be true. We were positioned along a tree line about 2 miles behind the main defensive positions. 12 of us in foxholes, rotating watch, waiting for orders, waiting for the war to move somewhere else. The weather was brutal. December in Belgium. Temperatures dropping below zero every night. Snow falling constantly. We huddled in our foxholes, burned what little fuel we could find, shared body heat, tried to stay alive in the cold. Henry's leg had been bothering him for about a week. He'd taken shrapnel from a German mortar on December 10th. Nothing serious. A piece of metal about the size of a dime lodged in his left calf. Our medic, Danny Reeves, had dug it out, stitched him up, gave himself a powder to prevent infection, said he'd be fine, keep weight off it for a few days, let it heal. But we couldn't keep weight off anything. We were soldiers. We walked. We stood watch. We dug foxholes. There was no rest, no healing time. You just pushed through and hoped your body held together long enough to make it home. By December 15th, Henry's leg was swelling. The wound site was red, angry, starting to show signs of infection. We need to get you to an aid station, I told him. Let a real doctor look at it. Henry shook his head. It's fine, Sarge. Just sore. I can handle it. That's an order, Schmidt. As soon as we get relieved, you're going to medical. He nodded, smiled that quiet smile of his. Yes, Sarge, whatever you say. That was the last normal conversation we had, because the next morning, everything went to hell.
December 16th, 1944, 5:30 a.m. The world exploded. German artillery opened up along a 50-mile front, thousands of guns firing simultaneously. The largest German offensive since 1940. Hitler's last desperate gamble to split the Allied forces, drive to Antwerp, cut off the British, force a negotiated peace. Operation Wacht am Rhein, Watch on the Rhine. What we'd later call the Battle of the Bulge. But that morning, we didn't know any of that. All we knew was that the earth was shaking. Trees were exploding into splinters. The sky was turning orange with fire. And then we heard the engines. Tanks, panzers, dozens of them, rolling through the fog like iron ghosts. And behind the tanks, German infantry. Thousands of them, pouring through the forest, overrunning positions, surrounding units. It was chaos. Complete chaos. Dave Henderson crawled to my foxhole, snow and dirt covering his face, eyes wide with fear I'd never seen before. Sarge, they're everywhere. Germans coming from the west and south. We need to fall back. I grabbed my binoculars, looked toward where our battalion command post should have been, saw black smoke rising, heard explosions, saw German tanks rolling through positions that should have been defended by hundreds of American soldiers. We were cut off, surrounded. Get everyone together, I shouted. We're moving, now. It took us 10 minutes to collapse our position. 10 minutes that felt like 10 hours. Every second I expected to see German infantry emerging from the trees, to hear the shout of Hände hoch, hands up, be captured or shot. But we made it. 12 men, moving as quietly as possible through the forest, heading east, away from the German advance, toward where we hoped friendly forces might still be holding. We moved all day, hiding when we heard engines, freezing when we heard voices, praying we wouldn't be spotted. By nightfall, we'd covered maybe 5 miles. Not nearly enough. We were still deep behind German lines, still surrounded, still alone. And Henry was starting to struggle. His leg was worse, much worse. The infection was spreading. Fever was setting in. His face was gray, sweating despite the cold. I'm okay, he kept saying. I can keep going. But he couldn't. Not really. Each step was agony. I could see it in his face, in the way he gritted his teeth, the way his hands shook. We'll rest here, I said. Found an abandoned barn, half-collapsed roof, no heat, but at least walls, some protection from the wind. We huddled together, shared rations, tried to sleep. But sleep was impossible. We could hear German convoys on the roads, tanks rumbling past, trucks full of soldiers. The whole German army seemed to be moving through this forest. And we were trapped in the middle of it.
December 17th. We moved before dawn, staying off trails, moving through the densest forest we could find, trying to be invisible. But it was hard to be invisible when you were leaving tracks in fresh snow. Hard to be silent when 12 men were crashing through frozen brush. Hard to move fast when one of you couldn't walk without help. Gene Kowalski and Joe Marino took turns helping Henry, supporting him between them, bearing his weight. It slowed us down, cut our pace in half. We should have been covering 2 miles an hour. We were barely making 1. Maybe we should find somewhere to hide, Billy suggested. Wait it out. Let the front lines move, then link back up with our forces. It wasn't a bad idea. Find a basement, a bunker, somewhere defensible. Wait for the Germans to pass through, then slip back to American lines after. But I rejected it. We keep moving, I said. If we hole up, we're trapped. If they find us, we have nowhere to run. We're better off moving, trying to get through. Dave nodded in agreement. Sarge is right. We keep moving. So we moved. Through that second day, making slow progress, getting colder, getting hungrier, getting more exhausted with every step. Around noon, we found our battalion command post, or what was left of it. Direct artillery hit. The building was gone, just a crater and debris. Bodies scattered around, some of them in pieces. Tommy threw up, couldn't help it. This was the first time he'd really seen what high explosives did to human bodies, what war really looked like when you stripped away the glory and the propaganda. Don't look, I told him. Put my hand on his shoulder. We can't stay here. Keep moving. But inside I was shaking, because some of those bodies were men I knew, men I'd trained with, men I'd shared meals with just a week ago, and now they were just meat scattered in the snow. That's what we all were, I realized. Just meat. Just bodies that could be torn apart by metal and fire. All our thoughts and dreams and hopes, they didn't matter. We were just targets waiting for the bullet or shell with our name on it. I pulled out my map, tried to figure out where we were, where we should go. We were about 15 miles behind what used to be the front line. The German breakthrough had been massive. They punched right through multiple divisions, and we were stuck behind their advance. Malmedy, I said, pointed at the map. 20 miles northeast. There should be American forces there, defensive positions. If we can make it there, we'll be safe. 20 miles. Might as well have been 100. In this weather, in this terrain, with German forces everywhere, with a wounded man who could barely walk. But what choice did we have? We started walking.
December 18th, the day everything changed. We'd been moving for 3 days, sleeping in 2-hour shifts, eating 1 meal a day, conserved rations, melting snow for water, trying to stay alive. Henry was getting worse. The fever was burning him up from the inside. He'd go from shivering to sweating. Sometimes he'd mutter things that didn't make sense, delirious. The infection was spreading. Without antibiotics, without proper medical care, it was only going to get worse. "We need to get him to a hospital," Danny Reeves said, our medic, 23 years old, from Virginia. Good kid, good medic. But there was only so much he could do with a field medical kit. "There's no hospital," I said. "We're behind enemy lines. Best we can do is keep moving. Get him to Malmedy. Get him to our lines." "He might not make it that far, Sarge." "Then we carry him as far as we can." That night, huddled in a destroyed farmhouse, Henry pulled me aside. His face was gray, eyes bright with fever, but still clear, still aware. "I'm slowing everyone down. You know I am." "You're fine," I lied. "We're all tired. We're all slow." "James." He used my first name, something he never did. "I'm not going to make it. My leg is bad. The infection is spreading. I can feel it. And I'm slowing the squad down, making everyone targets. We're not leaving you, I said firmly. We all go home together, or we don't go home at all. Henry smiled. That quiet smile. You're a good man, James. A good leader. These men are lucky to have you. We'll talk about this tomorrow, when we're all thinking clearer. He nodded, didn't argue. But I saw something in his eyes. Acceptance. Like he already knew how this was going to end. I just didn't want to admit it. Didn't want to face the possibility that I might have to make a choice I promised myself I'd never make. December 18th, evening. We were moving through a valley. Open ground on either side. Dense forest at both ends. Not ideal terrain, but it was the fastest route, and we needed speed. Needed to cover ground. Needed to get to safety before we froze to death or got captured. We were halfway across when we heard them. Voices. German voices. Shouting. Close. Too close. Down, Dave. Hissed. We hit the ground. Lay flat in the snow. Trying to be invisible. Through the trees to our west, I could see them. German patrol. Maybe 20 soldiers. Sweeping through the forest. Looking for stragglers. Looking for us. They hadn't seen us yet. They would. We were in the open. No cover. If they looked our direction, they'd spot us immediately. We need to move, Dave whispered. That ravine to the east. If we can make it there before they see us, we can lose them in the darkness. I looked at the ravine. Narrow, rocky, about 40 yards away. We could make it. If we moved fast. If we moved quietly. If we got lucky. But Henry couldn't move fast. Could barely move at all. Jean and Joe would have to carry him. Carrying someone across open ground would be slow, noisy, obvious. The Germans would see us, would open fire. We'd all be captured, or worse, in that open valley. I did the math in my head. Fast and quiet, we could make that ravine in 30 seconds. Carrying Henry, we'd need 2 minutes, maybe more. The Germans were going to sweep through this area any second. If we weren't in that ravine when they did, we were finished. On my signal, we move fast and quiet to that ravine. Stay low, stay silent. Everyone nodded, started getting ready to move. Jean and Joe moved toward Henry, started to lift him. And that's when Henry moaned. Pain, fever. He couldn't help it. The sound cut through the cold air like a gunshot. The German voices stopped. Halt, wer ist da? Who's there? They'd heard us. Move, now! I didn't whisper. I screamed it. We ran. 12 men exploding out of the snow, sprinting toward the ravine. Behind us, shouts in German, the crack of rifles, bullets snapping through the air, hitting the snow around us. We burst across that valley, running for our lives. My lungs burned in the frozen air. My legs screamed, but I kept running. We all kept running. Jean and Joe were half carrying, half dragging Henry between them. He was trying to run, trying to keep up, but he couldn't. His leg couldn't support his weight. He was slowing them down, slowing all of us down. That's when I saw them. More Germans, coming from the north, cutting off our route to the ravine. At least 30 of them, moving fast, organized. We'd run straight into a trap. We were surrounded. Germans behind us, Germans ahead of us. In the open, no cover, no escape. Contact north, Marcus Johnson shouted. Open fire with his rifle. We were caught, pinned, and we were all going to perish right there unless we moved, now. But there was only one route left, south, through a different ravine. Narrow, dark, dangerous, but open. That way, I pointed. South, move! Everyone turned, started running. Everyone except Jean and Joe.
They were still trying to carry Henry, moving at a crawl, and the Germans were getting closer, rifles cracking, bullets flying, men screaming. That's when I understood. That's when I saw it clearly. If we carried Henry, we'd all die right here, right now. The Germans would catch us in seconds, shoot us down like animals. 12 men would perish. But if we left Henry, if we left him and ran, the rest of us could make it, could disappear into that ravine, could survive. 11 men would live, or 12 men would die. I had 30 seconds to decide. 30 seconds to choose between the promise I'd made and the lives I could save. 30 seconds to become someone I'd never wanted to be. And in that moment, I learned what leadership really meant.
Gene, put him down. My voice didn't sound like my own. It sounded like someone else. Someone colder. Someone who could make impossible choices. What? Gene stared at me. Didn't understand. Didn't want to understand. Put him down. We can't carry him. We have to move now. Sarge, we can't just leave, Danny started. That's an order. I was screaming over the gunfire, over the shouts, over everything. If we don't move right now, we all die. Put him down and run. The silence that followed was deafening, even with bullets flying, even with Germans closing in. That moment of silence was the loudest thing I've ever heard. My men stared at me. Dave's face went white. Bobby looked like I'd hit him. Billy's eyes filled with betrayal. Gene and Joe stood frozen, still holding Henry between them. And Henry looked up at me from where he hung between Gene and Joe, his face gray with fever and pain, his eyes meeting mine. And in that moment, I saw understanding. He knew what I was doing, knew why I was doing it, knew that this was the only choice that saved anyone. And he nodded, actually nodded, gave me permission. Go, Henry whispered, his voice weak but clear. Sarge is right. Save them. It's okay. Henry, that's an order, Sarge. He smiled, even lying there with bullets flying past, even knowing what was coming. He smiled at me. Save them. I'm slowing you down. I'm not going to make it anyway. Save them, please. Tears were running down my face, freezing on my cheeks. I'm sorry, I choked out. I know, Henry said. Now go, before it's too late. Gene and Joe looked at me, waiting for me to take it back, waiting for me to find another way. But there was no other way. Move, I said quietly. That's an order. Gene let go first, then Joe. Henry sank into the snow, reached for his rifle. I'll cover you, he said. Buy you some time. Now go. We ran. 11 men, leaving the 12th behind. I heard Henry's rifle open fire behind us. Single shots, controlled, professional, buying us seconds, buying his life. Then I heard other rifles firing, German rifles, a lot of them. Henry's rifle went silent, and we kept running. Into that ravine, into the darkness, into survival purchased with abandonment. Billy was crying as he ran. Bobby was screaming. Danny was praying. But we all ran because Henry had given us permission, had given us orders, had sacrificed himself so we could live. And we couldn't let that sacrifice be meaningless. We couldn't stop, couldn't go back, could only run forward into the darkness, away from the man we'd left behind, away from the promise I'd broken, away from the leader I thought I was. We ran for 6 hours, didn't stop, didn't rest, just ran through that ravine and darkness, driven by horror and guilt and the desperate need to make Henry's sacrifice mean something. When we finally collapsed in exhaustion, nobody spoke. Nobody could speak. What was there to say? We'd left a brother behind, broken the most sacred rule, abandoned one to save the others. We'd crossed a line that could never be uncrossed.
Elder Foster punched me, hard, right in the jaw, knocked me flat into the snow. I didn't fight back, didn't defend myself, just lay there, tasting blood. "You left him!" Billy was screaming, sobbing. "You fucking left him to die! We could have carried him! We could have—" "We couldn't," Dave said quietly, pulled Billy back. "If we had tried to carry him, we all would have died. The Germans would have caught us in seconds." "So what?" Billy shouted. "So we die together! That's what brothers do! You don't leave men behind! You don't—" He couldn't finish, just collapsed in the snow, crying. We were all crying. Even Gene, who never showed emotion. Even Marcus, who was always the tough guy. We were all crying. Because we'd done something unforgivable. Something that couldn't be undone. We left Henry Schmidt behind to die alone in the snow so we could live. "He gave permission," I said finally, my voice hollow. "He understood. He knew that carrying him would get us all caught. He made the choice." "You made the choice," Bobby said, his voice cold, accusatory. "You're the sergeant. You gave the order." "Yes," I admitted. "I did. I chose 11 over 12. I chose you, all of you. And Henry? Henry chose it too. He ordered us to leave him, to save ourselves. That doesn't make it right." "No," I agreed. "It doesn't. Nothing about this is right. But we're alive. And Henry is—" I couldn't finish. Couldn't say the word. "We're alive because of him," Dave said quietly. "Because he understood what needed to happen. Because he was brave enough to let go, to give us a chance. So, we honor that. We stay alive. We make it home. We tell people about him, about what he did. We make sure his sacrifice means something." "How do we do that?" Bobby asked, voice breaking. "How do we go home and face people knowing what we did?" "I don't know. I honestly don't know. But we have to try. For Henry. Because if we die now, then he died for nothing." They stared at me, some with understanding, some with hatred, some with the hollow look of men who'd lost something they could never get back. But they nodded, agreed. We'd keep moving, keep surviving, keep carrying the weight of what we'd done. Because that's what Henry had bought us, the chance to live, even if living meant carrying him with us forever. We reached American lines on December 21, 3 days after leaving Henry behind. 11 men, frozen to our bones, starving, traumatized beyond anything we'd experienced in combat. When we stumbled into the forward command post, The lieutenant couldn't believe it. "Jesus Christ," he breathed. "Where's the rest of your unit?"
"This is it, sir," I said, my voice flat, empty. 11 men. He looked at us, counted, checked his roster. "Your squad was 12 men, Sergeant." The silence stretched, everyone waiting to see what I'd say, how I'd explain. "We lost one," Dave said finally. "Private Henry Schmidt, KIA during engagement with enemy forces, covered our retreat." It was all true, every word of it, but it wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was that I'd given an order to leave him, that I'd chosen to abandon him, that I'd made a tactical decision that saved 11 at the cost of 1. But how do you put that in a report? How do you write that down? So we told the simple version, the version that fit on a form, the version that turned abandonment into heroism. Henry Schmidt, killed in action, died covering his squad's retreat. Heroic sacrifice, posthumous Bronze Star, a star on his family's banner, a flag folded into a triangle, and a lie that we'd carry forever. They kept us in the rear for a week. Hot food, medical attention, new uniforms, rest. The battalion was being reorganized after the German breakthrough. New assignments were coming. On December 28th, the battalion commander called me to his tent. Colonel Morrison, career officer, hard as nails, veteran of North Africa. "Sergeant Muller," he said, "I'm promoting you, field commission to second lieutenant. You brought your squad through impossible odds. 11 men out of 12 survived. That's exceptional leadership." Exceptional leadership. The words tasted like poison. "Sir, that's not a request, Lieutenant." He pinned the gold bar on my collar. "Your platoon is waiting. 38 men who need a leader. You've proven you can make hard decisions under fire. That's exactly what we need." Hard decisions. Is that what we were calling it? I walked out of that tent wearing an officer's insignia, a reward for leaving a man behind, a promotion earned with abandonment. Billy was waiting outside, saw the gold bar on my collar, his face twisted with disgust. "They promoted you," he said flatly, "for leaving Henry. Billy, congratulations, Lieutenant." He spat the word like a curse, walked away, never spoke to me again for the rest of the war. I didn't blame him. I hated me, too. The war ended 4 months later, May 8th, 1945. Victory in Europe. Everyone celebrated, danced in the streets, kissed strangers, got drunk on liberation wine. I sat alone in my quarters and thought about Henry, about the choice I'd made, about the 11 men who'd lived and the one who hadn't. Was it worth it? 11 lives for one? The mathematics said yes, tactics said yes, command doctrine said yes, but my heart said something different. My heart said I'd failed the promise I'd made, failed to be the leader I'd wanted to be, failed to save everyone like I'd sworn I would. We went home in August, shipped back to the States, landed in New York to cheering crowds, people calling us heroes, thanking us for our service. I stood on that dock with my Bronze Star pinned to my chest and felt like a fraud, a liar, a man pretending to be something he wasn't. I went back to Iowa, back to the farm. My father met me at the train station, hugged me, told me he was proud, that the whole town was proud, that I was a hero. I nodded, said thank you, went home. And that night, alone in my childhood bedroom, I wept for Henry, for the choice I'd made, for the man I'd become. I tried to build a normal life after that, used the GI Bill to go to college, became an engineer, met a woman, got married, had children, built a career, built a life. But I was never really there. Part of me stayed in that Belgian forest, still making that choice, still hearing Henry's rifle go silent, still running away while he died alone. My wife tried to understand. God, she tried. But how could she? How could anyone who hadn't been there? You have nightmares, she said one night, years into our marriage. You scream names in your sleep. Who's Henry? A soldier I served with. Did you lose many friends? Yes. Do you want to talk about it? No. That conversation was the beginning of the end of our marriage. Not right away, but slowly, over years. You can't build intimacy when half of you is living in the past, when you're haunted by ghosts your partner can't see. We divorced in 1962. She remarried, had a good life. I'm glad. I never remarried, never even tried. How could I? How could I let someone get close when I was carrying so much death? 20 years after the war, I received a package. No return address, just a Belgian postmark. Inside was a letter from a farmer. He'd been plowing his field near Melmady, found something buried in the soil. American dog tags, and a diary. Henry's diary, preserved in a waterproof pouch. The farmer had tracked me down through Army records, wanted to return these items to Henry's family. But first, he thought I should see them. I didn't want to open that diary, didn't want to face it, but I had to know, had to see what Henry had written in those final moments. The last entry was dated December 18th, 1944, the night we left him. It said, "If anyone finds this, please send it to my mother in Pennsylvania. Tell her I wasn't afraid at the end. Tell her I understood what needed to happen. Tell her Sarge made the right call. I was slowing the squad down, couldn't walk. The infection was too far gone. If they'd stayed, the Germans would have caught us all, would have taken us prisoner or worse. Sarge saved them. He's a good man, the best man I know. He'll blame himself for this. He'll carry it forever. Someone needs to tell him it's okay. It was the right choice, the only choice. I want him to know that I forgive him, that I gave permission, that I understand. Tell him thank you for trying to save us all, for carrying the weight of command, for making the impossible choice that I couldn't make for myself. Tell him to forgive himself. Tell him to live. Tell him to be happy, because that's what I want. That's what I died for, so the men I loved could live and be happy. Please tell him that." I wept when I read those words, wept like I hadn't wept since that night in the snow, because Henry understood, had known exactly what I was doing, had known the weight I'd be carrying, and he tried to give me absolution, tried to lift the burden. But his forgiveness didn't heal anything. If anything, it made the weight heavier, because now I knew that Henry had died at peace with my decision, had died believing I'd made the right choice, believing I deserved forgiveness. And I still couldn't accept it. Still couldn't forgive myself, even though he had. I tried to find the others from my squad, to share Henry's words with them, to give them the peace Henry had tried to give me. Billy Foster had died in Korea, 1951, still fighting, still trying to outrun that night in Belgium, still trying to prove something. Gene Kowalski had passed away in 1963, liver failure, drank himself to an early grave. The guilt had eaten him alive, couldn't live with what we'd done. Bobby O'Connor refused to see me, hung up the phone when I called, sent back my letters unopened. Couldn't face it, couldn't face me, couldn't forgive. Dave Henderson agreed to meet me, 1985. We sat in a coffee shop in Ohio, 40 years after the war. Two old men trying to talk about something that had happened when we were young. I dream about him every night, Dave said quietly. Every single night for 40 years. I see him in that snow, see us running away, see him lifting that rifle to cover us. Me too, I whispered. Does it get easier? No. Was it worth it? He asked. The question I'd been asking myself for 40 years. Living with this? Surviving when he didn't? I didn't have an answer. Still don't. I'm 104 years old now. I've outlived my entire squad. Outlived Henry by 80 years. I've had a long life, a full life, career, family, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. More time than Henry ever got. More chances, more moments, more everything. And every single night, before I close my eyes, I whisper the same words. I'm sorry, Henry. Thank you, Henry. I'm so sorry. His diary said to forgive myself, said he'd forgiven me, said it was okay, but I can't, won't, because forgiveness would mean accepting that what I did was right, that choosing 11 over 12 was okay, that leadership means making terrible choices and living with them. And maybe that's true. Maybe that is what leadership means. But knowing that doesn't make it easier, doesn't make the weight lighter, doesn't bring Henry back. People ask me about the war, want hero stories, want tales of courage and brotherhood, want to hear about the greatest generation. I tell them, war is complicated, that it changes you, that sometimes there are no good choices, only less terrible ones. They nod, think they understand. They don't. How could they? How could anyone who hasn't had to choose, who hasn't had to look at 12 faces and decide that one of them has to die so the others can live, who hasn't had to give that order and then live with it for 80 years, they can't understand, and I wouldn't want them to, because understanding means carrying the weight, and this weight is mine alone. Here's what I learned in that frozen Belgian forest 80 years ago. War doesn't make heroes. It reveals people, strips away everything except the core of who you are. And sometimes what it reveals is something terrible, something you never wanted to be. I wanted to be a leader who never left anyone behind, who saved everyone, who brought his whole squad home. But that's not who I was, not when it mattered. When it mattered, I was a 24-year-old sergeant who who chose survival over honor, who chose 11 over 12, who abandoned a man to save the others. And I've spent every day since trying to understand if that makes me a good leader or a terrible person, or both, or neither.
Leadership isn't what I thought it was. It's not about being brave or strong or honorable. It's not about never making mistakes. It's not about being the hero everyone thinks you are. Leadership is about making impossible choices. It's about doing what needs to be done even when it destroys you. It's about carrying a weight that never lifts. About making decisions that save some at the cost of others. About living with those decisions forever. I made an impossible choice that night. Saved 11 men by leaving one behind. Made the tactically correct decision, the choice that resulted in maximum survival. And it cost me everything. Not my life, not my career, not my future. It cost me something deeper. It cost me the person I thought I was, a farm boy from Iowa who believed in honor and brotherhood and never leaving anyone behind. That person died in the snow next to Henry Schmidt. What came back was something else, something harder, something that understood the terrible truth. Sometimes the best you can do is not good enough. Sometimes you can't save everyone. Sometimes good leaders have to make evil choices. And sometimes the cost of survival is your soul. People see the medals on my chest, Bronze Star, the Purple Heart. They see a hero, a leader, a man who served with honor. They don't see the truth, don't see the cost, don't see the weight I carry every moment of every day. They don't see Henry's face, don't hear his rifle going silent, don't feel the cold of that snow, don't carry the burden of choosing who lives and who dies. I do. I carry all of it. And I'll carry it until I close my eyes for the last time and finally face Henry again. What will I say to him? How do I explain? How do I justify? His diary said he forgave me, said it was the right choice, said to live and be happy. But I couldn't be happy, couldn't forgive myself, couldn't accept that abandoning him was okay. So I lived, but not happily. Lived carrying the weight, carrying the guilt, carrying him with me every moment of every day. Maybe that's the real price of leadership. Not the decision itself, but the carrying. The weight that never lifts. The burden that lasts a lifetime. I still feel the cold. 80 years later, and I'm back in that forest every night. Back in that moment. Back making that choice over and over again. Leaving Henry behind. Hearing his rifle. Running away. Some nights, in my dreams, I make a different choice. I stay with Henry. Tell the others to go. Sacrifice myself instead. We fight together, die together, brothers to the end. Some nights I find another way, some impossible solution, some miracle that saves everyone, carries Henry to safety, brings us all home. But those are just dreams, just wishes, just the desperate hope that maybe I didn't have to make that choice.
that maybe there was another way, but there wasn't. I've replayed that moment 1,000,000 times, analyzed every option, considered every possibility, and the truth is simple and terrible. There was no other choice. Carrying Henry would have gotten us all captured, or worse. Staying with him would have meant abandoning 10 others. There was no solution that saved everyone, only the choice I made. 11 over 12, survival over honor. And that's what I have to live with. Not that I made the wrong choice, but that there was no right choice, only terrible options, and I had to pick one. That's leadership. That's command. That's what they don't tell you when you pin on those sergeant stripes. They don't tell you that sometimes being a good leader means doing terrible things. That sometimes the price of saving most is sacrificing some. That sometimes you have to choose, and that choice will haunt you forever. I made my choice. 11 men came home, had families, lived full lives. Billy Foster died in Korea, but he had 7 more years than he would have had. Jean had 18 more years. Bobby had 60. Dave had 70. Marcus, Joe, Charlie, Tommy, Andy, Danny, they all got to live, got to have futures, got to be more than frozen bodies in a Belgian forest. Because Henry didn't. Because Henry stayed behind. Because Henry gave his life. Because I made a choice. Was it worth it? I don't know. I've spent 80 years trying to answer that question, and I still don't know. Ask those 11 men, ask their children, ask their grandchildren, all the lives that exist because I made that choice. Maybe they'd say yes. Maybe they'd say Henry's sacrifice was worth it. But I can't say that. Can't reduce a human life to mathematics. Can't turn brotherhood into tactical calculations. Can't accept that leaving Henry was okay, even if it saved everyone else, even if it was the only option, even if he gave permission. I can't accept it, and I never will.